All right, Briahna, what's on your radar today?
Well, Robbie, does it seem like liberals are always coming for your stuff? I feel like every time I log on, there's another article about how Democrats are infringing on our freedoms. This week it's gas stoves. A few years ago it was hamburgers. Last year, wokeness claimed the sexiness from the green M&M. Heck, I'm old enough to remember when liberals allegedly ruined Christmas at Starbucks with those damn confounded red cups. But whether or not you're someone who needs to see, say, religious iconography on your latte, long legs on your candy, or a pilot light flickering in your kitchen, you probably recognize that none of these issues are core to the freedoms that matter the most to you. Your ability to keep a roof over your head, pay for health care, raise your family safely, and with the values and traditions you hold dear. Which is why it doesn't matter to me if the woke M&M or coffee cups make people angry. I get it. Change is hard. And I can't deny that flats don't flatter every anthropomorphized sweet snack. Frankly, I don't know that Little Debbie has the legs for sneakers. But what if I told you that while we're debating confectionary's footwear, state legislatures are passing laws that will dictate what you wear in your free time, that will constrain your choice to express yourself the way you want to? Now, we've talked a great deal about social media censorship, accounts being shadow banned or banned outright, entire stories like the Hunter Biden laptop story being wiped from the internet. What if I told you that there was a Texas law banning your ability to use certain social media sites entirely? We've talked a lot about the surveillance implications of Amazon home camera systems and how big tech companies so often turn your private information over to corrupt and untrustworthy police forces. But what if I told you that there's a Mississippi law being promulgated that would install cameras in rooms to record adults at work and school so that they can be monitored at will? And what if I told you that if your gender is ambiguous, say you're a short-haired woman partial to a pantsuit, that you'd have to submit to a DNA test under a new law to confirm that state documents conform to your gender assigned at birth, and that state workers that didn't force you to get a DNA test would be fined $1,500 for not complying with the law? What if I told you that after decades of First Amendment law being built on defending the right for adult magazines and videos to exist, that Louisiana passed a law that would require you to submit a state ID in order to view pornography? You can technically still see it, but who's keeping the list? I regret to inform you that this dystopian portrait is very much our current reality. Earlier this month, Idaho Republicans considered a bill that would ban public drag shows. Unlike other bills promulgated in other parts of the country, this bill isn't about banning children from drag shows. It simply bans men wearing women's clothes and vice versa. So much for any historically accurate productions of Shakespeare. Gender-bending Halloween costumes or even a fun Friday night for Rudy Giuliani.
That's Giuliani, then mayor of New York, in drag.
You know, you're really beautiful.
The sketch was for a charity dinner, and it's pretty racy.
This may be the best of all. Oh, you dirty boy, you. Oh.
Look what they're taking from us. Look, in all seriousness, this law harkens back to anti-cross-dressing laws from the 1960s, which limited how many articles of clothing from the opposite sex a person could wear. And like so many laws, it was invented to criminalize, punish, and fine ordinary citizens, restricting their core American freedoms. Dig a little deeper and you'll find the Idaho law was drafted by a self-described Christian nationalist, Blaine Conzatti, whose explicit goal is to impose his specific brand of Christianity on all the diverse Christian and non-Christian citizens of Idaho. Conzatti cites Deuteronomy as a basis for this law, you know, the part of the Bible that says you can't wear wool and linen woven together. What's next? Are conservatives coming for your winter knits? Now, this law is not likely to pass constitutional muster, but as an op-ed in a local paper observed, it is likely to cost taxpayers plenty of money on a frivolous lawsuit to protect the citizenry's First Amendment rights. And where are the state Republicans in all of this? Well, this is a state where a few years ago they killed a bill that would give single mothers access to the federal child support system because they believed it meant Sharia law was going to be enforced. So, needless to say, not a ton of pushback from the local GOP. Things aren't looking much better a couple of states over in North Dakota, where Republicans are so concerned with how people choose to identify on state forms that anyone, including state employees who wittingly or unwittingly use a pronoun other than the one assigned at birth on a form, will be penalized to the tune of $1,500. Yet another instance, it seems, of government extracting fees from working people. Now, while the legislature is dreaming up new regulations and new fines, it's worth noting that North Dakota's poverty rate is 13% lower than the U.S. average, or higher rather, and the minimum wage is 7.25 cents an hour. A 2022 poll shows that state priorities included education, crime, abortion access, inflation, and high taxes. Makes sense. That's what people all over the country care about. It seems, however, that policing gender identity didn't rank anywhere on that list. Now, in Texas, Greg Abbott is quite literally taking the choice away from Texas citizens. He has directed state agencies to ban TikTok on campus Wi-Fi networks. I guess you will watch what Big Brother Abbott tells you to watch. What is this logic? Well, it's apparently that to protect you from Chinese influence on TikTok, America has to become as restrictive and authoritarian as China. I mean, okay. In Mississippi, Republicans have introduced House Bill 278, which would require cameras to be installed in classrooms, including post-secondary education institutions. Meaning, whatever you think about whether or not young kids should be observed, adults in college and grad school would be surveilled. As one lawyer put it, taxpayer surveillance of adults, not exactly the founding fathers' dream. And in Louisiana, while you can still technically watch adult videos, you now have to show your government ID for the privilege. I hope you trust the nanny state with the contents of your For Me page. Now, I get it. Wokeness can be annoying. Will and Grace and RuPaul really seem to have traumatized a generation. But while Democrats might have won some aspects of the culture war, with respect to gay rights, marriage equality, and basic racial equality all over the country, some Republican extremists are using legislation to force their beliefs upon the public, using the law. They couldn't win the battle of ideas, apparently, so now they're using our legal system to strip Americans of their ability to choose what they wear, what they watch, and how they represent themselves. You have to ask yourself, how far is this going to go? A Pennsylvania school district has banned pride flags. Will other flags be banned? Canadian flags? Confederate flags? Blue Lives Matter flags? Prisoner of war flags? What governmental bureau of acceptable flag waving will decide what banners the censured citizens of Doylestown, Pennsylvania are allowed to wave? A West Virginia law, SB 252, would make it illegal for a parent named Caitlin Burns to even travel with their kids in the state of West Virginia because her status as a trans woman is considered, quote, obscene under the law. The penalty for this woman being near her children, a 5-year prison term and a $25,000 fine. And while so much of the concern about trans issues has been focused on the idea that children, due to their young developing brains, should be protected from from undue influence or from making big, consequential medical decisions, both the rhetoric here and the laws are increasingly criminalizing parents of trans children, adult behavior, as well as medical professionals who provide gender-affirming care to adults. Just as was the case during the, let's say, Afghanistan withdrawal and so many other moments in history, won't somebody think of the children as being used as a pretext to justify behavior that ordinary Americans in ordinary circumstances would never accept? A foundational principle of conservatism or libertarianism, I thought, was to allow adults to make their own choices. But despite foregrounding freedom in their rhetoric and framing woke culture wars over cups and ovens as restrictions on foundational rights, some Republican lawmakers have been working overtime to actually impose their will on the public rather than simply convince them through the war of ideas. I don't think anyone should take your gas oven, to be clear. And the good news is no one's going to. Like so many viral news stories, this is a nothing burger dreamed up to distract us from the high cost of living, low wages, big tech overreach, congressmen's insider trading, the rich getting richer, and legislators rigging the IRS so that rich people will never have to pay a fair share. Even if you don't quite get what all the fuss is about with respect to trans folks, even if you think drag shows are weird or even prurient, consider what it means to give the government more and more power to police how we live, how we parent, how we consume media, and to surveil our everyday lives. Surely you've heard Martin Niemöller's warning. First they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. How many communities will have to fall before you're worried enough about what it means for you? So yeah, Robbie, I've been really disturbed by the real wave of restrictions, legislative restrictions that have been coming down the pike, even just in the last month or two. Many of them actually passed into law and successful. This pornography bill in Louisiana, which we've alluded to several times in the show, is really kind of galling. And I expect there to be some significant, legal backlash to a lot of these things, and also kind of public backlash, as I think Republicans have gotten over their skis here. But it really is frustrating to me because I understand why people are mad at a lot of the things that the culture wars have us mad at. I don't care what you think about the green M&Ms shoe wear at the end of the day. But if we're talking about that at the same time that they're passing laws to make you have to sign a loyalty oath, saying that you won't support BDS in order to get a government contract, it seems obvious to me that those kind of infringements are so much more central to your basic rights as an American citizen.
So most of the things you've pointed out, not all of them, but most of them are things I also think are ridiculous that conservatives should not work on, that would violate the Constitution or are in other ways violating people's freedoms under the guise of protecting freedom, and it's totally backward language. The porn ban is a good example of also something that is way worse, that potentially at least, than the thing is trying to cure. Putting in your driver's license, like, we don't want to freely give our information to big tech. Isn't that, how many times do conservatives have to learn that lesson?
Right.
That, like, empowering state surveillance of webs, it's so stupid. We just went through this.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, it's totally at odds with what the norms are for at what age you can do things, and that's it. Like, you can get married at 16 in the state of Louisiana, but you still have to put in your driver's license to visit Pornhub. It makes no sense. I feel similarly, of course, about a total ban on drag shows. We're starting to get a little ahistorical with like the conservative grievances against drag. I understand and agree with, although I would still just it's none of my business. I would just leave it to other families. Like, bringing kids to shows where they're stripping does not seem appropriate to me. I don't think the law really needs to weigh in here, but I understand why people don't like it. But just adults, men wearing women's clothing is actually a part of like military culture. Indeed, like South Pacific, and I've seen that World War II, the all male, like it was funny. It was for entertainment.
Harvard
it was not
tasty
sexual
pudding performances.
As you brought up Shakespeare, like it is a centuries old. It's an American tradition. It's a centuries old tradition. It's not woke or liberal or progressive. So we're getting a little nuts here in maybe letting some peculiar conservative Christian tendency try to dictate for how all conservatives or Republicans should feel about this. So I agree with you on a lot of this. We've got to be careful. Now, the debate over what schools teach and what appears in schools is much more fraught because now this is concerning public resources. Taxpayers have to support it. It's much more. There's a more legitimate case. Well, I don't want this being subsidized or taught, and I have to pay for it, and it's which is why I want to move as much stuff outside the realm of like public government control of things, so we don't have those debates. And then what was the last? Oh, gas ovens, though. Not a nothing burger. I don't agree that that's a nothing burger.
Right.
The Consumer Product Safety Commission talked about maybe banning their sales in the future. The CDC and health bureaucrat people, they would love to dictate to all of us, just guidance, don't have to do it, but everyone does, about what we're allowed to cook our foods. I'm going to be cooking your nothing burger on my gas stove, okay?
Like, there's many states where Republicans want to leave things to the states. Okay. Many states have voted and decided that they want to ban these kind of ovens. If you don't want that to happen in your state, don't do it.
Fine.
But it's also the case that incentives have been provided without the ban. Incentives are already been provided for people to get a lot of money, frankly, to switch out their stoves if they want to. And that's actually an expansion in these states where there isn't a ban. It's an expansion of your ability to make a different kind of choice if you want. That's a very different thing. I want to come back just briefly to the example of the school. I intentionally limited this radar. Like, you have maybe personal feelings about drag shows and whether or not you would or would not attend with your children. I have personal feelings about what should or should not be taught in school. in a more progressive way. However, I'm not making any of those arguments here in this radar. What I'm saying is that even if you think that you have a vested interest in what children in schools are learning about, putting cameras in college classrooms to surveil people, I submit, is not the best way to go about having an impact on what the curriculum is.
Especially because we just went through the whole helicopter parenting conversation.
Yeah, nanny state.
Many conservative parents think, and I agree with them, that this is a huge problem, that children are too watched and too supervised. We don't let people have free unstructured playtime anymore where they can maybe, scrape their knees or fall off the monkey bars and learn from that experience. We don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
This would be going so wildly in the wrong direction.
So who's going to sit there and watch their 22-year-old child's Kim class, reviewing the Google types?
A lot of
it's
people
wild.
named Karen, I think.
Joan and
Sorry, what are we supposed to call them?
Robbie.
What does Stanford say? Entitled white women. That's so much worse.
So much worse.
So much worse.
It's so much worse.
More Rising right after this.